I need you to listen to me closely because what I am about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about my family, about my marriage, about the 63 years I spent building a life that I believed was real. My name is Margaret, and I am 79 years old. For the past 4 years, I have been living with Alzheimer's disease, though some days I forget that too. Some days I forget my own name. Some days I wake up and do not recognize the house I have lived in for 40 years. But there is one day I will never forget, no matter how many memories this disease steals from me. It was my 79th birthday, and it was the day my family tried to destroy me in front of everyone I had ever known. You need to understand something about Alzheimer's before I continue. It is not just about forgetting where you put your keys or what you ate for breakfast. It is about losing yourself piece by piece, watching your own mind betray you while everyone around you pretends not to notice, or worse, notices and treats you like you are already gone. It is about seeing the frustration in your husband's eyes when you ask him the same question for the 5th time. It is about hearing your own children whisper in the kitchen about what to do with you, as if you are a problem that needs solving instead of a person who raised them, loved them, sacrificed everything for them. My husband Richard and I had been married for 63 years. 63 years. We met when I was 16 years old at a church social in our small town in Connecticut. He was 18, tall and handsome, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that made my heart skip. We married when I was 19, and I gave birth to our first child, Thomas, when I was 20. Then came Jennifer 2 years later, and finally Sarah 3 years after that. I devoted my entire life to that family. I gave up my dreams of becoming a teacher to raise those children. I cooked every meal, cleaned every room, attended every school event, nursed every fever, and wiped every tear. Richard built his construction company from nothing, and yes, he worked hard, but I was the one who kept everything together at home. I was the foundation. When the Alzheimer's diagnosis came 4 years ago, everything shifted. At first, Richard seemed supportive. He held my hand in the doctor's office when they told us. He promised we would face it together. But as the symptoms progressed, as I started forgetting appointments and repeating myself, and occasionally getting confused about what year it was, I began to see a different side of him. The patience wore thin. The kindness became mechanical. He started spending more time at the office, even though he was supposed to be semi-retired. He started taking phone calls in the other room. He started looking at me like I was a burden. My children were not much better. Thomas, my oldest, was always Richard's son, cold, calculating, obsessed with money and status. He married a woman named Claudia who came from old money, and together they lived in a mansion in Greenwich and acted like they were royalty. Jennifer was softer, or so I thought, but she was weak. She went along with whatever Thomas said because she did not want conflict. And Sarah, my baby, the one I thought would always be on my side, had become so consumed with her own life, her own career as a corporate lawyer, that she barely had time to call me anymore. The birthday party was Thomas's idea. He said he wanted to celebrate me, to show me how much the family loved me, to give me one last big party while I could still enjoy it. Those were his exact words. While I could still enjoy it, like I was already halfway dead. But I was excited despite myself. It had been so long since anyone had made a fuss over me. It had been so long since I felt like I mattered to anyone. They rented out the ballroom at the Waterford Estate, one of the most expensive venues in the state. The invitations went out to over 200 people, family, friends, Richard's business associates, people from our church, neighbors we had known for decades. The theme was luxury, elegance, everything I had never asked for but that Thomas insisted on because it reflected well on the family. He kept saying that. It reflects well on the family, Mother, as if my 79th birthday was really about him. The morning of the party, I woke up confused. I did not remember it was my birthday. I did not remember there was a party. Richard had to remind me, and when he did, I saw that flash of irritation in his eyes that had become so familiar. He called Jennifer to come help me get ready because he said he did not have the patience for it. Jennifer arrived 2 hours later with a team of people, a hairstylist, a makeup artist, a woman carrying a garment bag with a dress I had never seen before. They descended on me like I was a doll to be prepared for display. The dress was beautiful, I will give them that. It was a deep emerald green silk gown with delicate beading along the neckline. It must have cost thousands of dollars. But when I put it on, I felt like I was wearing a costume. This was not something I would have chosen for myself. This was something chosen to make me look good in photographs, to make the family look good. I barely recognized myself in the mirror after they finished with my hair and makeup. I looked like an elegant stranger. We arrived at the Waterford estate at 6 in the evening. The ballroom was decorated with white roses and gold accents, crystal chandeliers sparkling overhead, round tables draped in ivory linen surrounding a dance floor that gleamed under the lights. A string quartet played classical music in the corner. Waiters in black ties circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It was breathtaking. It was also completely overwhelming. People began arriving, and I was stationed near the entrance with Richard beside me to greet everyone. Friends I had not seen in years, distant cousins, Richard's old business partners. Everyone kissed my cheek and told me how wonderful I looked and how special this party was. But I could see it in their eyes too, that careful politeness people use around someone who is sick, that slight hesitation before they spoke, as if they were weighing their words to make sure I could understand them. I smiled and thanked them, but inside I felt like I was disappearing. Dinner was served at 7. I was seated at the head table with Richard on one side and Thomas on the other. Claudia sat beside Thomas, dripping in diamonds, her smile as cold as her heart. Jennifer and her husband Mark were there too, along with Sarah and her fiancé David. We ate filet mignon and lobster while the string quartet played and people laughed and clinked glasses. I barely tasted the food. My mind kept drifting. I kept forgetting where I was, why all these people were here. Thomas would lean over and whisper sharply, "Stay focused, Mother. People are watching." After dinner, Thomas stood up and tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent. He began a speech about me, about my life, about what a wonderful mother and wife I had been. He talked about my sacrifices, my dedication, my strength. He said beautiful things, things I had waited my whole life to hear him say. But there was something wrong with his tone. There was something performative about it, like he was reciting lines he had memorized. And as he spoke, I noticed Richard would not look at me. He kept his eyes on his plate, his jaw tight. Then Thomas said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "And now, to honor our mother on this special milestone, we have prepared a very special gift, something that will ensure her comfort and care for the remainder of her journey." The remainder of her journey, like I was already dying. The room erupted in polite applause as waiters began bringing out boxes wrapped in silver paper to the head table. One box was placed in front of me. Others were placed in front of Richard and each of my children. I looked around, confused. Why were they getting gifts at my birthday party? Thomas smiled at me, that cold smile that never reached his eyes, and said, "Go ahead, Mother. Open yours first." My hands were shaking as I reached for the box. It was heavier than I expected. I pulled at the ribbon, tore at the paper, my heart pounding for reasons I did not yet understand. And when I opened the box and saw what was inside, the entire room seemed to tilt. Divorce papers. A thick stack of legal documents with my name and Richard's name printed at the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I stared at the words, but they did not make sense. I looked up at Richard, waiting for him to explain, waiting for him to tell me this was some kind of mistake. But he was looking at Thomas with an expression I had never seen before. Gratitude. He looked grateful. Before I could speak, before I could even process what was happening, Thomas stood up again and addressed the room. He said, "As many of you know, our mother's condition has been deteriorating. It has become increasingly difficult for our father to provide the level of care she requires while also managing his own health and well-being. After much consideration and consultation with medical professionals and legal advisors, we have determined that the best course of action is for our parents to divorce so that Mother can be placed in a full-time memory care facility where she will receive professional 24-hour care." The room was completely silent. 200 people staring at me. I tried to stand up, but my legs would not work. I tried to speak, but no words came out. Thomas continued. He said the facility had already been selected. He said the paperwork had already been filed. He said this was what was best for everyone, especially me. He said I would be moved within the week. He said all of this in front of everyone I had ever known, in front of my entire life, at my own birthday party. I finally found my voice, and it came out as a broken whisper. "Richard?" I looked at my husband of 63 years. "How could you?" But Richard did not answer. He stared at the table. It was Claudia who spoke next, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Margaret, sweetie, you have to understand. This is for your own good. You cannot take care of yourself anymore. Richard cannot take care of you. You need professionals. The house, the assets, everything needs to be protected. Protected. That word cut through the fog in my mind like a knife. This was not about my care. This was about money. This was about making sure I did not have any claim to the house, to Richard's business, to the wealth we had built together over 6 decades. They were divorcing me and locking me away so they could divide everything up without me getting in the way. And they were doing it here, in public, at my birthday party, so I could not fight back, so I would be too humiliated and confused to resist. I looked at Jennifer, desperate for an ally, but she looked away. I looked at Sarah, my baby, but she was crying quietly into her napkin, and when I reached for her, she pulled her hand back. I was alone, completely and utterly alone in a room full of 200 people who had come to celebrate me, but were now watching me be discarded like trash. The whispers started then. I could hear them rippling through the room. Oh my God, can you believe this? This is horrible. Poor thing. How awful. But no one stood up for me. No one objected. No one said this was wrong. They just watched. And in that moment, I understood that I had already been erased. In their minds, I was already gone. Thomas was still talking, explaining the logistics, the timeline, the name of the facility, but I was not listening anymore. I was staring at the divorce papers in front of me, at the pen that had been placed beside them, at the signature line where they expected me to sign my life away. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. And then I remembered the other boxes. Richard and the children had received boxes too. "Open your gifts," I said. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a rage I did not know I still had in me. I said it again, louder. "Open your gifts. Let everyone see what you got for my birthday." Richard looked at Thomas. Thomas looked at Claudia. There was panic in their eyes, but they could not refuse, not with 200 people watching. Slowly, reluctantly, they opened their boxes. Richard pulled out a set of keys, house keys, my house keys, the keys to the home I had lived in for 40 years, the home I had raised my children in, the home that was being taken from me. Thomas opened his box to find legal documents transferring power of attorney over all my finances and medical decisions to him. Jennifer's box contained a real estate appraisal for the house. Sarah's box had a detailed breakdown of the assets that would be divided after the divorce was finalized. They had wrapped up my entire life, packaged it in pretty silver paper, and distributed it among themselves like party favors. The room erupted. People were standing up, shouting, demanding to know what kind of sick joke this was. Some people were leaving, disgusted. Others were surrounding the head table, asking Richard and Thomas how they could do this. But in the chaos, I sat very still, staring at the divorce papers, feeling the weight of 63 years crushing down on me. And then I remembered something. There was one more box, a small box that had been placed beside my champagne glass earlier in the evening. I had assumed it was part of the table decoration, but now I reached for it. It was wrapped in simple brown paper, tied with white string. There was a tag that said, "For Margaret, open when you are ready to fight back." My hands trembled as I untied the string and tore the paper. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. The note said, "Margaret, you are not as alone as they want you to believe. Everything they have done is on here. Every lie, every forged signature, every illegal transfer of assets. I have been documenting it for 2 years. You have power. Use it." It was not signed, but the handwriting was familiar in a way I could not quite place. I looked up, searching the crowd for whoever had left this, but everyone was still arguing, still in chaos. I slipped the flash drive into my purse and stood up. This time, my legs held me. I looked at Richard, at Thomas, at my daughters, at all the people who had tried to bury me alive, and I smiled, because for the first time in 4 years, my mind was completely, crystal clear. I knew exactly what I needed to do. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever felt like the people who are supposed to love you have already decided you do not matter anymore? If that resonates with you, if you have ever been dismissed or underestimated or treated like you are less than you are, I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to go to the comments and type these exact words. "I see you, Margaret. I believe you." Because here is the truth. When we share our pain, when we acknowledge each other's struggles, we build something stronger than any family that could betray us. We build community. We remind each other that we are not alone. So please, take a moment right now and type that in the comments. "I see you, Margaret. I believe you." Let us fill this space with solidarity, with the voices of everyone who has ever been made to feel small. Your comment matters. Your voice matters. You matter. Now, Where was I? Yes, the flash drive, the note, the sudden clarity that cut through the fog of my Alzheimer's like a beam of light breaking through storm clouds. I stood there at that head table in my expensive green dress, holding that small flash drive in my hand, and I felt something I had not felt in years, power, but I could not let them see it yet. I had to be strategic. I had to be smart. And despite what my family thought, despite what they had convinced themselves of, I was still capable of both. I sat back down slowly, carefully folding the divorce papers and placing them back in the box. The room was still in chaos. Some guests were arguing with Thomas, demanding explanations. Others were confronting Richard, asking him how he could humiliate his wife like this. A few people had already left, unwilling to be part of whatever this nightmare had become, but most people were still there, frozen in shock, watching to see what would happen next. Thomas was trying to regain control of the situation. He was using his courtroom voice, the one he used when he was trying to intimidate someone into submission. He was saying that everyone needed to calm down, that this was a private family matter, that the decision had been made with my best interests at heart. He kept using phrases like professional medical advice and quality of life and necessary intervention. He was good at it too. I could see some people starting to nod, starting to think that maybe this was reasonable after all, that maybe I really was too far gone to know what was good for me. But then something unexpected happened. A woman stood up from one of the back tables. I recognized her, though it took me a moment to place her. Her name was Patricia, and she had been my friend for over 30 years. We had raised our children together, volunteered at the church together, shared countless cups of coffee and secrets and tears. We had drifted apart in recent years, partly because of my illness, partly because life just gets in the way. But she was standing now, her face flushed with anger, and she was walking toward the head table. Patricia stopped right in front of Thomas and said in a voice that carried across the entire ballroom, "I have known your mother for 32 years, and I have never in my life seen anything as disgusting as what you just did to her." She turned to Richard. "And you, 63 years of marriage, and this is how you repay her? By serving her divorce papers at her own birthday party like some kind of sick entertainment? You should be ashamed of yourselves, all of you." Jennifer started to say something, but Patricia held up her hand. "I do not want to hear it. I do not want to hear about how hard this has been for you, or how this is for her own good. If you actually cared about Margaret's well-being, you would have had a private conversation with her. You would have involved her in the decision-making process. You would have treated her with dignity and respect. Instead, you ambushed her in front of 200 people. That is not love. That is cruelty." Other people started speaking up then, too. A man I vaguely recognized from Richard's old construction company said he had watched Richard change over the years, become colder and more money-obsessed. A woman from my church group said she had visited me a few months ago and that while I was forgetful, I was still myself, still capable of joy and conversation and making my own choices. One by one, people began to defend me, and I sat there overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. I had thought I was alone. I had thought everyone saw me the way my family did, as a problem, as less than human, but I was wrong. Thomas was losing control of the room, and I could see the panic in his eyes. He tried to shut down the conversation, but people were not listening to him anymore. Claudia was whispering frantically in his ear, probably telling him to end the party, to get me out of there before things got worse. But it was too late. The damage was done. Everyone in that room now knew exactly what kind of people my family were. I stood up again, and this time I did not wait for permission. I picked up the microphone that Thomas had used for his speech, and I tapped it to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent. 200 faces turned toward me, and I saw pity in some eyes, curiosity in others, but in many I saw something I desperately needed. I saw belief. They were ready to listen. My voice was shaky at first, but it grew stronger with every word. I know many of you think I am too sick to understand what is happening to me. I know my family has convinced some of you that I am already gone, that the woman you knew has been erased by this disease, but I am still here. I am still Margaret, and I want you all to know that I did not know anything about this divorce until 30 minutes ago when I opened that box. I was not consulted. I was not asked. I was ambushed at my own birthday party because my husband and my children want to take everything I have and lock me away where I cannot fight back. Richard stood up, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Margaret, that is not true. We have talked about this. You just do not remember. But I knew he was lying. I could see it in his eyes. And apparently other people could see it too, because several people shouted at him to sit down and let me finish. I continued. For 63 years, I gave everything to this family. I sacrificed my dreams, my career, my identity to be a wife and mother. I kept the home. I raised the children. I supported my husband's business. And now that I am sick, now that I need care and patience and love, they want to throw me away like garbage. They want to strip me of my assets and my autonomy and put me in a facility so they can pretend I never existed. But I am not going to let that happen. I held up the flash drive, though I did not explain what it was yet. I said, I have been underestimated my entire life. I have been dismissed and patronized and told to smile and be grateful. And maybe in the past I accepted that because I did not know I had any other choice. But tonight, something changed. Tonight I realized that being sick does not mean being powerless. Tonight I realized that I still have a voice, and I am going to use it. The room erupted in applause. Not everyone was clapping. Richard sat stone-faced. Thomas and Claudia looked like they wanted to crawl under the table, but enough people were clapping that I felt a surge of strength I had not experienced in years. Patricia came up to the head table and took my hand, and I held on to her like she was a lifeline. After the applause died down, I said one more thing. This party is over, but this fight has just begun. And then I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high, Patricia at my side, leaving my stunned family and 200 witnesses behind. Patricia drove me to her house that night. I could not go back to Richard. I could not face him, could not trust him. She made up the guest room for me and brought me tea and sat with me while I cried. I cried for hours. I cried for the marriage that was a lie. I cried for the children who valued money more than their own mother. I cried for the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. But eventually, the tears stopped, and we talked. I told her about the flash drive, about the note, about the mysterious gift that had appeared at my table. Patricia suggested we look at it immediately, so we went to her home office and plugged the flash drive into her computer. What we found on that drive changed everything. There were hundreds of files, scanned documents, photographs, audio recordings, video clips. Someone had been meticulously documenting my family's actions for at least 2 years, maybe longer. There were emails between Thomas and Richard discussing how to move assets out of my name without me noticing. There were forged signatures on legal documents transferring ownership of properties and bank accounts. There were records of Thomas accessing my medical files without authorization. There were recordings of conversations where Richard talked about how much easier his life would be once I was in a facility, and he could sell the house and retire to Florida with his girlfriend. His girlfriend. I had to read that twice. Richard had a girlfriend, a woman named Denise who was 52 years old and worked as a receptionist at his company. They had been seeing each other for 3 years. 3 years. While I was losing my mind to Alzheimer's, while I was scared and confused and desperately clinging to the one person I thought would never leave me, he was having an affair. There were photographs of them together, at restaurants, at hotels, at a beach resort in the Bahamas on a trip he told me was for business. There were text messages where he complained about me, called me a burden, said he could not wait to be free. There were emails where he and Thomas strategized about the divorce, about how to make sure I got as little as possible in the settlement, about how to use my illness against me to prove I was incompetent. Patricia sat beside me as we went through file after file, and I watched her face shift from shock to disgust to fury. Finally, she said, "Margaret, do you know what this means? This is evidence of fraud, of elder abuse, of exploitation. Whoever gave this to you just handed you a nuclear weapon. But who gave it to me? That was the question that kept circling in my mind. Who had access to all of this information? Who had been watching my family closely enough to document everything? Who cared enough about me to spend 2 years gathering evidence? We found the answer at the very end of the flash drive. There was a video file labeled "For Margaret Eyes Only." I clicked on it, and a face appeared on the screen that made my heart stop. It was Sarah, my youngest daughter, my baby. She was sitting in what looked like her home office, and she had clearly been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, her voice thick with emotion. She said, "Mom, if you are watching this, it means everything went exactly the way Thomas planned it. It means they humiliated you at your birthday party. It means they tried to take everything from you. And it means I was too much of a coward to stop them in person. I am so sorry, Mom. I am so sorry." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I have known about their plan for 2 years. Thomas told me about it like it was some brilliant strategy, like he was so proud of himself for figuring out how to cut you out of your own life. And I was horrified. I told him it was wrong. I told him we could not do this to you. But he said if I did not go along with it, he would make sure I was cut out of the will too. And I was weak, Mom. I was so weak. I let my fear of losing my inheritance override my love for you. I let them convince me that this was necessary. But it is not. It is evil. Sarah leaned closer to the camera. So I started documenting everything. Every email, every conversation, every shady financial transaction. I copied files from Thomas's computer. I recorded conversations without them knowing. I gathered everything you would need to fight back. Because even if I was not brave enough to stand up for you publicly, I could at least give you the tools to stand up for yourself. Everything on this drive is admissible in court. I have already consulted with 3 different lawyers to make sure. You have enough here to stop the divorce, to reverse the asset transfers, to pursue criminal charges if you want to. You have power, Mom. Please use it. Please do not let them win. The video ended, and I sat staring at the black screen, tears streaming down my face. Sarah, my baby, the one I thought had abandoned me, had actually been protecting me all along. She had not pulled her hand away at the party because she did not care. She had pulled away because she could not bear to blow her cover, could not risk Thomas finding out what she had done. Patricia squeezed my shoulder. You have an army now, Margaret. You have evidence. You have witnesses from the party. And you have people who love you. What do you want to do? I thought about that question for a long time. What did I want? Did I want revenge? Did I want to destroy the people who had tried to destroy me? Part of me did. Part of me wanted to watch them suffer the way they had made me suffer. But there was another part of me, a deeper part, that just wanted justice. I wanted my life back. I wanted my dignity back. I wanted to make sure that what they did to me could never happen to anyone else. I want to fight, I said, and I want to win. The next morning, Patricia helped me find a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one who specialized in elder law and exploitation cases. Her name was Diane Rothman, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting vulnerable adults. We met with her that afternoon, and I brought the flash drive. Diane spent 3 hours going through the files. She did not say much while she reviewed the evidence, but I could see her jaw getting tighter, her eyes getting harder. Finally, she looked up at me and said, "Mrs. Westfield, I have been practicing law for 28 years, and this is one of the most egregious cases of elder exploitation I have ever seen. Your family did not just betray you, they committed multiple felonies. With your permission, I would like to bury them." I gave her permission. What happened over the next 6 weeks was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Diane moved fast. Within 3 days of our first meeting, she had filed an emergency motion to freeze all of our joint assets and to block the divorce proceedings until a full investigation could be conducted. She submitted the flash drive contents as evidence, along with affidavits from Patricia and 17 other guests from the birthday party who were willing to testify about what they had witnessed. Richard and Thomas tried to fight back. They hired their own lawyers, expensive ones, and they tried to argue that I was mentally incompetent and that the flash drive had been obtained illegally. But Diane had anticipated every move. She had me evaluated by 3 independent neurologists who all confirmed that while I did have Alzheimer's disease, I was still capable of understanding my own financial and legal affairs and making informed decisions. She had Sarah provide testimony about how she had obtained the evidence, all of it legally since she had power of attorney that Thomas had ironically insisted she get 2 years ago as part of his plan. The judge was not sympathetic to Richard and Thomas. In fact, the judge was appalled. At the preliminary hearing, she said she had never seen such a calculated and cruel attempt to exploit a vulnerable person, and she granted every motion Diane filed. The divorce was blocked. The asset transfers were reversed. Richard was ordered to move out of the house immediately, and a criminal investigation was opened into possible fraud and elder abuse charges. I moved back into my home 3 weeks after the birthday party. It felt strange at first, walking through rooms that Richard had already started packing up, seeing boxes labeled with my belongings like I was already dead. But Patricia stayed with me, and slowly, the house started to feel like mine again. I threw out the boxes. I rearranged the furniture. I took down the photographs of Richard and replaced them with pictures of my children when they were young, when they still loved me unconditionally. Sarah came to see me the day after I moved back in. She stood on my porch crying, saying she was sorry over and over, saying she understood if I never forgave her. But I pulled her into my arms and held her tight, and I told her that she had saved my life. Yes, she should have been braver. Yes, she should have stood up to Thomas sooner. But in the end, she had given me the one thing I needed most. She had given me the truth. Sarah and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. She told me everything. She told me how Thomas had always been controlling, how he had manipulated the entire family for years, how he had convinced Jennifer and even Sarah herself that everything he did was for the good of the family. She told me about Claudia's influence, how Claudia came from a family that viewed relationships as transactions and had taught Thomas to see the world the same way. She told me how scared she had been, how trapped she had felt, and how gathering that evidence had been the only way she could think of to fight back without putting herself in Thomas's crosshairs. I told her I understood, and I did, because I knew what it was like to be afraid of the people who were supposed to love you. I knew what it was like to feel powerless, and I knew that courage was not the absence of fear. It was doing the right thing even when you were terrified. Jennifer came to see me too, though it took her longer. She was ashamed, and she should have been. She admitted that she had known the plan was wrong, but had convinced herself that it was necessary, that I would be better off in professional care, that this was what happened to people with Alzheimer's. I did not forgive her as easily as I forgave Sarah. Jennifer had not tried to help me. She had simply gone along with the cruelty because it was easier than standing up to her brother. But she was still my daughter, and I told her that if she wanted to rebuild our relationship, she would have to earn it. Thomas never came. Thomas hired more lawyers and tried to fight the criminal charges. He released a public statement saying that everything he had done was out of concern for my well-being and that I was being manipulated by opportunistic people who wanted access to my money. It was a pathetic attempt at damage control, and no one believed him. Too many people had been at that party. Too many people had seen the truth. The trial happened 4 months later. Richard and Thomas were both charged with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, fraud, and conspiracy. Claudia was charged as an accessory. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and it was brutal. Diane presented all the evidence from the flash drive. She called witnesses who testified about the party. She called the neurologist who explained that having Alzheimer's did not mean I was incapable of making decisions. She called financial experts who walked through every illegal asset transfer. And she called me. I testified for 3 hours. I told the jury about my marriage, about my children, about the birthday party. I told them about the moment I opened that box and saw the divorce papers. I told them how it felt to be betrayed by the people I had sacrificed everything for. And I told them that this was not just about me. It was about every elderly person who had ever been dismissed or exploited or abused by the people they trusted most. It was about making sure that families could not get away with treating their vulnerable members like obstacles to be removed. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, they found Richard, Thomas, and Claudia guilty on all counts. Richard was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Thomas got 5. Claudia got 2. The judge also ordered them to pay restitution for all the money they had tried to steal, plus damages, plus my legal fees. In total, it came to just over $2 million. I did not feel victorious when the verdict was read. I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that my family had destroyed themselves out of greed. Sad that my marriage of 63 years had ended not with love or even indifference, but with betrayal and a prison sentence. But I also felt something else. I felt free. After the trial, I sat down with Sarah and we talked about the future. She wanted me to move in with her, but I refused. I wanted to stay in my home, the home I had fought to keep. We compromised. Sarah moved into the guest house on my property so she could be close by if I needed help, but I could still maintain my independence. We hired a part-time caretaker, a wonderful woman named Rosemary who treated me with respect and kindness and never talked down to me like I was a child. My Alzheimer's continued to progress, of course. That is the nature of the disease. Some days were harder than others. Some days I forgot where I was or what year it was. Some days I called Sarah by my sister's name or asked for my mother who had been dead for 30 years. But I also had good days. Days where my mind was clear and I could remember everything. Days where I worked in my garden or had lunch with Patricia or video chatted with old friends who had reached out after hearing about the trial. The trial had made national news. Elderly woman fights back against family's birthday betrayal. The headlines read. I was interviewed by several news programs. I became an accidental advocate for elder rights. People started reaching out to me, sharing their own stories of exploitation and abuse, asking for advice, thanking me for being brave. I started working with Diane to help other people in similar situations. We formed a foundation dedicated to protecting vulnerable adults from financial exploitation. Sarah ran it. I was the face of it. And together we helped dozens of families. A year after the trial, I was sitting in my garden on a warm summer afternoon, drinking lemonade and watching the birds, when I had a moment of perfect clarity. I thought about everything that had happened: the birthday party, the divorce papers, the flash drive, the trial, the rebuilding, and I realized something. My family had tried to erase me. They had tried to make me disappear, but instead, they had given me a purpose I never would have found otherwise. They had turned me into a fighter. They had turned me into someone who mattered. I thought about the note that had come with the flash drive. You have power, it had said. Use it. And I had. Not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel powerless. Now I want to talk to you for a moment. If you have made it this far in my story, it means something resonated with you. Maybe you have seen this kind of exploitation in your own family. Maybe you have felt dismissed or invisible. Maybe you are caring for someone with Alzheimer's and you are afraid of what the future holds. Whatever brought you here, I want you to know that you are not alone. And I want to ask you to do something for me. If this channel has given you something valuable, if my story has touched you or helped you or made you feel less alone, I want you to subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because this community we are building matters. Every person who subscribes is another voice saying that elderly people deserve dignity, that vulnerable people deserve protection, that our stories matter. When you subscribe, you are joining a movement. You are saying that you see us, that you believe us, that you stand with us. So please, take a moment right now and click that subscribe button. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who is struggling with a difficult family situation, or caring for a loved one with dementia, share this video with them. Let them know they are not alone. Let them know there is hope. Let them know that even when everything feels lost, it is possible to fight back and win. Now, I promised you the complete truth, and there is one more thing I need to tell you. Something I have not shared in any of the interviews or news stories. Something that only Sarah and Patricia and I know. Are you ready? The flash drive that Sarah gave me, the one with all the evidence, was not the only gift I received that night. Remember, there were multiple boxes on that table. After everything happened, after the trial, after the dust settled, I went back through my belongings and I found one more box that I had not opened during the party. It was small, wrapped in the same brown paper as the flash drive box, with another handwritten note. The note said, "Margaret, by now you know that Sarah has been protecting you, but there is something else you need to know. She was not working alone." I opened the box and inside was a photograph. It was old, yellowed with age, from at least 40 years ago. It showed me and Richard and our 3 children at the beach. We were all smiling. We looked happy, but there was someone else in the photograph, someone standing slightly apart from the family. A teenage boy I did not recognize at first. I stared at that photograph for a long time before the memory came back. His name was Daniel. He was Thomas's best friend in high school. He spent so much time at our house that he became like a 4th child to me. His own mother had died when he was young, and his father was abusive. I used to make him dinner, help him with his homework, let him sleep on our couch when things got bad at home. I had not thought about him in decades. After high school, he moved away for college and we lost touch. Beneath the photograph was a business card, Daniel Frost, private investigator, and a handwritten message. "You saved me when I was 16 years old. You were the only person who ever treated me like I mattered." When Sarah reached out 2 years ago and told me what Thomas was planning, I knew I had to help. Everything on that flash drive, I gathered it. Sarah gave me access, but I did the work. Consider it a repayment for all the dinners, all the kindness, all the times you made me feel like I was worth something. You taught me that family is not just blood, it is the people who show up for you when it matters. I am showing up for you now. I called the number on the card, and Daniel answered. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about his life, about how he had become a private investigator specializing in elder abuse cases because of what I had taught him about protecting vulnerable people. He told me that when Sarah contacted him, desperate and scared and looking for help, he had dropped everything to assist her. He told me that he had wanted to reveal himself at the trial, but Sarah convinced him to stay anonymous because she was worried Thomas would try to retaliate against him. He also told me something that made everything make sense. He said, Margaret, you probably do not remember this, but when I was 17 and living on your couch, you sat me down one night and told me something I have never forgotten. You said that the measure of a person is not what they do when people are watching, but what they do when no one will ever know. You said that real courage is helping people even when you get no credit for it. I have tried to live by that my whole life. And helping you, documenting what your family was doing, that was my way of honoring what you taught me. I did remember. Not clearly, not perfectly, but enough. I remembered a scared, angry teenage boy who softened over time, who started to trust me, who became kinder and gentler because someone finally showed him kindness and gentleness. I had not saved his life. I had just treated him like a human being, and 30 years later, he had returned that gift when I needed it most. So that is the truth, the whole truth. My family tried to destroy me, but they failed. Not just because I fought back, but because decades ago, I had planted seeds of kindness without even realizing it, and those seeds grew into a rescue mission orchestrated by my youngest daughter and a boy I had once fed grilled cheese sandwiches to while he cried about his father. There is a lesson in that, I think. You never know how the love you put into the world will come back to you. You never know which small act of kindness will change someone's life. You never know who is watching, who is remembering, who will show up for you when you need them most. I am 79 years old. I have Alzheimer's disease. Some days I do not remember my own name, but I remember this. I remember that I fought back. I remember that I won. And I remember that even in my darkest moment, surrounded by people who wanted to erase me, I was not alone. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. You are stronger than you think. You are more loved than you know, and it is never too late to fight for yourself. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for seeing me. And remember, subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because every story we share here is another reminder that we matter, that our voices deserve to be heard, and that together, we can protect each other from the people who would rather we disappear. My name is Margaret. I am still here, and I am not going anywhere. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. You might be wondering if this story has a happy ending, if everything is perfect now, if the pain just disappeared after the trial. Let me tell you something important. Life does not work that way, especially not when you are living with Alzheimer's. The disease does not care that I won in court. It does not care that I got my house back or that my family is in prison. It keeps taking pieces of me, day by day, memory by memory. But here is what I have learned. Winning was not about making the pain go away. It was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about proving that I still matter. There are mornings when I wake up and I do not remember the trial. I do not remember the birthday party. I do not remember the betrayal. Rosemary, my caretaker, finds me sometimes wandering the house looking for Richard, asking when he is coming home, and she has to gently remind me that Richard is not coming home, that Richard hurt me, that I am safe now. Those moments are devastating. It is like experiencing the betrayal fresh every single time. But Sarah comes over and she holds my hand and she shows me the photographs from the trial, the news articles, the letters from people I have helped through the foundation, and slowly, the memories come back. Not all of them, not perfectly, but enough. There are also days when my mind is crystal clear, when I remember everything in vivid detail, and those days are almost harder because I have to sit with the full weight of what happened. I have to process the fact that the man I loved for 63 years cared more about his girlfriend and his retirement fund than he cared about me. I have to accept that my oldest son saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to his inheritance. I have to live with the knowledge that if Sarah and Daniel had not intervened, I would be locked in a memory care facility right now, stripped of everything I owned, forgotten by everyone except the staff who changed my sheets and fed me my meals. But I also have days filled with unexpected joy, Days when Patricia comes over and we sit in the garden and laugh about old times. Days when Sarah and I cook together and I teach her the recipes I learned from my mother. Days when letters arrive from strangers telling me that my story gave them the courage to investigate their own family's financial dealings, or to stand up to an abusive relative, or to seek help for a loved one being exploited. Those letters remind me why I shared my story in the first place. Not for fame, not for sympathy, but to shine a light on something that happens in the darkness, something that people are ashamed to talk about. Elder abuse is an epidemic. Financial exploitation of vulnerable adults is happening in families across this country, across the world, and most of it never gets reported because the victims are too confused, too scared, or too ashamed to speak up. Or because, like me, they are dismissed as incompetent before they even get a chance to defend themselves. The system is designed to protect assets, not people, and families know that. They know that if they move fast enough, if they get the right paperwork signed, if they convince the right doctors that their elderly parent is incapable of making decisions, they can take everything and no one will stop them. That is why the foundation that Sarah and I created is so important. We work with lawyers, social workers, and medical professionals to identify cases of potential exploitation. We provide free legal consultations to elderly individuals who suspect they are being taken advantage of. We educate families about the warning signs. We lobby for stronger laws to protect vulnerable adults. And we share stories. So many stories. Because every time someone speaks up, every time someone says this happened to me too, it becomes a little bit harder for abusers to operate in the shadows. 6 months after the trial, we held our first fundraising gala for the foundation. It was nothing like my birthday party. It was smaller, more intimate, filled with people who actually cared about the cause, rather than people who just wanted to be seen. Daniel came. He flew in from California where he had moved for work, and when I saw him walk through the door, I broke down crying. He looked so different from the scared teenager I remembered, but his eyes were the same, kind, grateful. He gave a speech that night about how one person's kindness can ripple forward through decades, and there was not a dry eye in the room. Patricia gave a speech too. She talked about the importance of showing up for your friends, especially when they are going through something difficult. She talked about how easy it is to drift apart, to let life get in the way, to assume that someone else will help. She said that when she stood up at my birthday party and confronted my family, it was not because she was particularly brave. It was because she could not live with herself if she stayed silent. And she encouraged everyone in that room to be the person who stands up, who speaks out, who refuses to let cruelty go unchallenged. We raised over $300,000 that night, $300,000 to help protect people like me. I gave a short speech at the end of the evening, and I told everyone that a year ago I thought my life was over. I thought I had been reduced to nothing more than a problem to be solved. But the truth is, my life did not end. It transformed. I became someone I never imagined I could be, an advocate, a fighter, a voice for people who have been silenced. I also told them about the moments that still haunt me. The look on Richard's face when he realized I was not going to sign the divorce papers quietly. The coldness in Thomas's eyes when he announced to 200 people that he was going to lock his own mother away. The feeling of being completely alone in a room full of people. I told them these things because I wanted them to understand that healing is not linear. You do not just win a court case and move on. You carry the trauma with you, but you also carry the strength. And over time, if you are lucky, the strength becomes heavier than the trauma. Something else happened after the trial that I did not expect. My story went viral on social media. I am 79 years old, and I barely understand what that means. But Sarah explained it to me. Millions of people watched videos about my case. They shared articles. They commented with their own stories of family betrayal and elder abuse. Some of the comments were heartbreaking. People whose parents had been exploited. People who were being exploited themselves but did not know how to fight back. People who felt guilty because they had stood by while a family member was mistreated. But there were also comments that filled me with hope. People who said my story inspired them to have difficult conversations with their elderly relatives about their finances and legal protections. People who said they were going to check in on their aging neighbors more often. People who said they were going to volunteer at senior centers or donate to elder advocacy organizations. My pain, my public humiliation, had sparked something. It had created awareness. It had started conversations. And maybe, just maybe, it would prevent what happened to me from happening to someone else. Sarah started this YouTube channel as a way to continue sharing stories and raising awareness. She said that people connect with personal narratives more than they connect with statistics. She said that if we could create a library of stories from real people who had experienced exploitation, betrayal, or abuse, we could build a community of support and education. So we started filming. Sometimes I tell my own story. Sometimes we bring in guests who share theirs. Sometimes Sarah interviews experts about legal protections and warning signs. The response has been overwhelming. Thousands of people have subscribed. Thousands of people are watching and learning and sharing. And that is why I keep doing this, even on the days when remembering is painful, even on the days when I can barely string a sentence together because my Alzheimer's is particularly bad, because this matters, because silence protects abusers, because speaking up saves lives. I want to tell you about someone we helped through the foundation. Her name is Dorothy, and she is 84 years old. Her son and daughter-in-law had slowly taken control of her finances over the course of several years. They convinced her to add their names to her bank accounts for emergencies. Then they convinced her to sign over power of attorney because she was getting forgetful. Then they convinced her to sell her house and move into a smaller apartment, promising they would invest the money for her. Except they did not invest it. They used it to buy themselves a vacation home. Dorothy did not realize what was happening until she tried to access her savings to pay for a medical procedure and discovered that her accounts were empty. When she confronted her son, he told her she was confused, that she had agreed to all of it, that she should be grateful they were managing her money because she was too senile to do it herself. He told her that if she made trouble, he would have her declared incompetent and placed in a nursing home. Dorothy saw a news segment about my case, and she reached out to the foundation. We connected her with Diane, the same lawyer who represented me. Diane took her case pro bono. We helped Dorothy gather evidence, file charges, and freeze her assets. The case is still ongoing, but Dorothy has her power of attorney back. She has legal protection in place, and most importantly, she has her dignity back. She told me that seeing my story gave her hope that it was not too late to fight, that being old and forgetful did not mean being powerless. There have been dozens of cases like Dorothy's. Some we have been able to help, some we have not, because the victims were too far into the legal process or too scared to testify against their own families. But every single person who reaches out, every single person who says, "I think something is wrong and I need help," is a victory, because they are speaking up. They are refusing to be silent victims. I have also heard from people on the other side of this issue, adult children who are genuinely struggling to care for aging parents with dementia, people who are exhausted and overwhelmed and scared, people who worry that every decision they make is the wrong one. I want to be clear about something. Needing to make difficult decisions about a parent's care is not the same as exploitation. Putting a loved one in a memory care facility because they need 24-hour medical supervision is not the same as what my family did to me. The difference is respect. The difference is inclusion. The difference is whether you are making decisions with your loved one or making decisions to your loved one. My family did not sit me down and have a conversation about my care needs. They did not ask me what I wanted. They did not give me options. They ambushed me with divorce papers at a public event specifically designed to humiliate me into compliance. They forged my signature on legal documents. They stole my money. That is not caregiving. That is abuse. If you are caring for someone with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, please hear me. It is okay to be tired. It is okay to need help. It is okay to make difficult decisions about care, but include your loved one in the conversation as much as possible. Treat them with dignity. Respect their autonomy even when their cognition is impaired. Do not lie to them. Do not steal from them. Do not treat them like they are already dead. They are still human beings. They still have rights. They still deserve love. I wish someone had said that to Richard and Thomas. I wish someone had pulled them aside and reminded them that I was a person, not a problem, but they were too far gone, too consumed by greed and selfishness to see me as anything other than an obstacle. Richard wrote me a letter from prison 6 months into his sentence. Sarah brought it to me and asked if I wanted to read it. I said yes, though I was not sure I was ready. The letter was short. He said he was sorry. He said he had made terrible choices. He said he had convinced himself that the divorce and the facility were for my own good, but that he knew now that he had been lying to himself. He said the affair with Denise had started because he felt lonely and overwhelmed by my illness, and that instead of dealing with those feelings honestly, he had run away from them. He said he understood if I never forgave him, but that he wanted me to know he regretted everything. I read that letter 3 times, and then I put it in a drawer, and I have not looked at it since. I do not know if I forgive Richard. I do not know if forgiveness is even the right word for what I feel. I am not angry anymore. Anger requires energy, and I do not have energy to waste on him, but I am not ready to absolve him either. He made choices. He chose his own comfort over my well-being. He chose money over our marriage. He chose to humiliate me in front of 200 people rather than have an honest conversation with me in private. Those choices have consequences, and a letter from prison does not erase them. Thomas never apologized, not once. He maintains to this day that he did nothing wrong, that he was acting in my best interests, that the legal system failed to understand the complexities of caring for someone with dementia. Claudia divorced him while he was in prison. Apparently, her old money family was not interested in being associated with a convicted felon. I would feel sorry for him if he had shown even a shred of remorse, but he has not, and so I do not. Jennifer has been trying to rebuild our relationship, and I have let her to a certain extent. She comes to visit once a month. We have lunch. We talk about safe topics, surface things, but there is a distance between us now that I do not think will ever fully close. She was complicit in my betrayal. She knew it was wrong and she did it anyway. That is hard to forget, even for someone with Alzheimer's. Sarah is my rock. She lives in the guest house on my property, and she is there every single day. She helps me when I am confused. She reminds me to take my medications. She cooks meals with me and watches old movies with me and sits in the garden with me. But she also gives me space to be independent. She does not hover. She does not treat me like I am fragile. She treats me like I am her mother, someone she loves and respects, someone who is sick but still whole. We have talked a lot about what will happen as my Alzheimer's progresses. I have made it very clear that I do not want to go into a facility unless it becomes medically necessary. I want to stay in my home as long as possible. I want to be surrounded by familiar things. I want to wake up in the bed I have slept in for 40 years. I want to sit in the garden I planted with my own hands. Sarah has promised me that she will honor those wishes. She has also promised me that when the time comes, when I can no longer make decisions for myself, she will advocate for me the way I would advocate for myself. She will make sure I am treated with dignity. She will make sure no one takes advantage of me. She will protect me the way she protected me with that flash drive. I have legal protections in place now too. I have a trust that cannot be touched by anyone except Sarah and a neutral third-party trustee. I have advanced directives that specify exactly what kind of medical care I want. I have a team of doctors who understand my wishes. I have done everything I can to make sure that what happened to me at that birthday party can never happen again. But I also know that the law can only protect you so much. What really protects you is having people who love you, people who will stand up for you, people who will fight for you when you cannot fight for yourself. I am lucky. I have Sarah. I have Patricia. I have Daniel checking in on me from California. I have a community of people who have rallied around me because of this case. Not everyone has that, and that breaks my heart. There are so many elderly people right now tonight as you are watching this who are being exploited by their families, who are being isolated and controlled and stolen from, who are afraid to speak up because they have been convinced that they are the problem, that they are too much of a burden, that they deserve what is happening to them. If you are one of those people, please listen to me. You do not deserve this. You are not a burden. You have value, and there is help available if you are willing to reach for it. Contact your local adult protective services. Contact an elder law attorney. Contact organizations like the National Center on Elder Abuse. Contact our foundation. Reach out to someone you trust. Tell them what is happening. Do not suffer in silence. Do not let shame keep you trapped. I know it is scary. I know it feels impossible, but I promise you, it is not. I fought back at 79 years old with Alzheimer's disease, and I won. If I can do it, so can you. And if you are someone who suspects that an elderly person in your life is being exploited, Please do not look the way. Do not assume it is not your business. Do not tell yourself that someone else will handle it. Be the Patricia who stands up at the birthday party. Be the Daniel who spends 2 years gathering evidence. Be the person who makes a difference. You might be the only chance that person has. I have been doing a lot of reflecting lately about the course of my life. 79 years is a long time. I have lived through wars and recessions and technological revolutions. I have raised children and buried parents and built a home. I have experienced profound joy and devastating heartbreak. And if you had asked me 2 years ago what my legacy would be, I would have said my children. I would have said that my purpose was to raise good human beings who would go out into the world and make it better. But 2 of my 3 children tried to destroy me. So clearly I failed at that. Or did I? Because Sarah turned out to be exactly the kind of person I hoped she would be. Brave, principled, willing to risk everything to do the right thing. And maybe that is enough. Maybe 1 out of 3 is not failure. Maybe it is proof that I did something right. Or maybe my legacy is not my children at all. Maybe it is this foundation, this community, these stories, the people we have helped and the people we will help in the future. Maybe my purpose was always bigger than my family. Maybe I had to lose everything to find out what I was really meant to do. I do not believe in fate. I do not believe that everything happens for a reason. What my family did to me was not some cosmic plan to turn me into an advocate. It was cruelty, plain and simple. But I do believe that we get to choose what we do with our pain. We can let it destroy us, or we can transform it into something meaningful. I chose transformation, and that choice has given my life a purpose I never imagined. There are still hard days when the Alzheimer's wins, when I cannot remember why I am angry or who I am supposed to be fighting, days when I look at Sarah and I do not recognize her, and I ask where my daughter is, and she has to tell me she is my daughter, and I can see the heartbreak in her eyes. Days when I am so exhausted from the effort of just existing that I wonder if my family was right, if I would be better off in a facility where someone else could manage everything. But then I have a good day, a clear day, a day when I remember everything and I feel strong and I know that I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And those days make the hard days worth it. I turned 80 years old last month. Sarah threw me a birthday party, a small one, just her and Patricia and Daniel and a few close friends. We had cake in my garden. We told stories. We laughed. There were no surprises, no divorce papers, no humiliation, just love. Just people who genuinely cared about me, celebrating the fact that I am still here, still fighting, still refusing to disappear. Sarah gave me a gift. It was a photo album she had made, filled with pictures from the past year. Pictures of us cooking together, pictures of me working in the garden, pictures from the foundation gala, pictures of letters from people we had helped. And on the last page, she had written a note. Mom, you taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing the right thing even when you are terrified. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for being the strongest person I know. I love you. Happy birthday. I cried. I cried so hard I could barely breathe, but they were good tears, healing tears. Tears that washed away just a little bit more of the pain from that other birthday party, the one that almost destroyed me. I do not know how much time I have left. Alzheimer's is progressive and unpredictable. I could have years. I could have months. My doctors cannot tell me, but however much time I have, I am going to use it. I am going to keep sharing my story. I am going to keep helping people through the foundation. I am going to keep showing up, keep speaking out, keep fighting, because that is what survivors do. We survive, and then we make sure that our survival means something. Before I finish, I want to come back to you one more time. You have spent all this time listening to me, an 80-year-old woman with Alzheimer's, tell you about the worst and best moments of my life. That means something. That means you care. That means you are part of this community we are building. And I want to ask you to take one more step. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please do it now. Not for me. For the next person who needs to hear that they are not alone. For the next Dorothy who is sitting at home terrified and wondering if anyone will believe her. For the next family who is struggling with difficult decisions and needs guidance. This channel is not about entertainment. It is about education, support, and solidarity. Every subscriber is another person who is saying that elderly lives matter, that vulnerable people deserve protection, that we will not stay silent in the face of abuse. And if you have already subscribed, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of the solution. Please share this video with someone who needs to see it. Post it on your social media. Send it to family members. Talk about it with your friends. The more people who know about elder exploitation, the harder it becomes for abusers to get away with it. Leave a comment telling me your story. Tell me if you have experienced something similar. Tell me if you are caring for an elderly loved one and struggling. Tell me if you have questions. Tell me if you just need someone to hear you. I read every comment. Sarah reads every comment, and we respond when we can. This is a community. You are not just watching. You are participating. You matter. My name is Margaret Westfield. I am 80 years old. I have Alzheimer's disease. I was betrayed by my family at my own birthday party. They tried to take everything from me. They tried to erase me, but I fought back. I won, and now I am using my voice to protect others. I am still here. I still matter, and so do you. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for proving that even in the darkest moments, we are never truly alone. Now go subscribe, go share, go make a difference, because together, we are stronger than any force that tries to silence us. This is Margaret, signing off, but I will be back, because my story is not over yet, and neither is yours.